Hey, AI is all the rage, but how can it help you with code quality? That's what we're going to be talking all about today with Itamar, who is the CEO and co-founder of CODU, previously Codium AI. And before founding CODU, he actually was the founder of Visual Lead, which was acquired by Alibaba Group, which probably everyone knows about. And he's worked for the Alibaba Group for 4 years as a director of machine learning or machine vision, which I'm really excited to dive into as well to see what that's all about. And really excited to hear more about this new technology. It can help DevOps engineers, testers, and everyone with code quality, which I think is a good use of AI. You don't want to miss this episode. Check it out. Hey, welcome to the guild.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here.
Great to have you. I guess before we get into it, is there anything in your bio that I missed that you want the guild to know more about?
Yeah, I think that was good enough. I think throughout my career, I worked a lot on quality stuff. Whether I can add to what you said that I worked on chips verification and Mellanox, and also like system verification, etc. And then when you're doing machine learning, I have a master and bachelor degree in machine learning. You're dealing a lot with benchmarks, so it's not a surprise that. Eventually, when we came into disrupting the software development world, we care a lot about quality and testing and reviewing. And that's also part of the reason why we're renaming the company Codium AI, although I love the name, to Qodo with a Q, in order to emphasize the quality of development. That's what's behind the Qodo name.
Nice. So, back in the day when I started, quality was relegated to a group of testers. And I'm not saying developers didn't think about quality, but it wasn't the top of their list, I don't think, because they had a group that handled it. So obviously there's now a shift where developers are more and more responsible for quality. So is that why you see more of a need for tooling to help them not only create excellent code, but make sure it's of high quality?
Yeah, that's one reason, but there's another reason that AI is already writing more and more of our code, and probably in the future is going to has even automation level of code writing by AI is going to increase. There could be lines of code, maybe many of them that a human would not review. So we have to have the counterpart. We don't want to have those outages where half of the world is can't work because of blue screen or whatever. I'm referencing to one famous outage from last months. So in order to enable that level of automation of AI writing more and more code, we have to have the counterpart that focused on the quality. You can ask yourself, by the way, okay, if the same AI is writing code, why it shouldn't also check its own code? The thing is that I'll keep it short. To start with, first, it's different techniques. Yeah, maybe both cases, LLM is being one of the core components, both in code generation and code quality. By the way, sometimes we call it code integrity, this field, I can explain. But so it could be it could have some mutual building blocks like LLM, but it's still the overall system looks very different. The UI looks different. And also, you don't want to let the cat, make sure that he's guarding his own milk, right?
Right. Yeah. So that was my follow-up. How can you trust AI written code being tested by AI? Where does the human come in at this point?
Yeah. First, let me answer your first part. It's like saying, how could you trust code written by human if it's tested by another human? Don't you think there is some equivalent? And both of them are human. So the thing is that they use very different tools. In a platform like Qodo, we have tools that integrate mutation testing as part of its. We have a statistical analysis that is focused on understanding behavior of the actual usage. We are focused on analyzing best practices of an organization and then making sure that they're being applied. So the techniques and the user interface and the methods. By the way, I'm going to share a news that unfortunately, it's only a few days from now that we're going to share the actual numbers. But we took, for example, O1, the new models by OpenAI, and they released that the number that they share that they competed with O1 on a competition called Code Forces. And supposedly O1 thinks by itself. You don't need to put it as part of an agent. It could do all the steps that think by itself about the problem. Okay, it happened to be that we developed an additional agent like an independent agent called Alpha Codium. We call it like that because to give credits to Alpha Code by DeepMind. And Alpha Codium can take any model and also compete on that programming competition, but this time also applying testing technique, code review technique, spec matching technique. Surprisingly or not, we O1, when you put it inside Alpha Codium improves the results of O1 by 50% better. Okay, why? Because it exploits techniques that O1 cannot, like around testing and code review, and then the overall outcome of the agent Alpha Codium that is using a model like O1 that can supposedly think is much better. Okay, so it's like, why AI? Why should we trust AI to check other AI? Because they're not the exact same entity, similar to how a QAer is not exact same entity, not using the same tool as a developer.
All right. So how does that work? Can you break it down for me? Like, is it, you don't prompt it? It just knows like this code does this, so therefore I'm going to test these inputs and things that I'm going to crawl it automatically and be able to determine states that it should and should not be in?
Actually, great question. In a paper we released, it's actually very, and by the way, what I'm sharing is open source. It got accepted by many, like even Karpati tweeted and related to it, etc. So basically, we call it from prompt engineering to flow engineering. So your question is like spot on. It's not just using the right prompt. Actually, it's almost not a lot at all about that. It's actually developing a flow where, as part of the software generation, of the code generation, we don't only use LLM to generate code, we also use LLM to generate tests. We also use other techniques that are not related to AI to run the test, debug the code, verify that the specification meets the actual development. So that's why we call it flow engineering, because think about it more like as an algorithm that runs a step by step, running different LLM calls, different prompting, different tool usage, until it generates a code that was actually reviewed in different ways. And O1 by itself cannot do that. Like, it doesn't have the framework to do that. It doesn't have the tools that's connected to it, to the two things that are important: the framework and the tools.
All right. So once again, how does this work then? Like, how do you envision this working in a modern software development company then? Do they just say, here's what we want? They hand it off to an AI that then codes it and creates it, and then calls an agent that then tests it, and then lets you know whether or not they're going to ship it into production. Like, what does that flow look like?
Yeah, great. So I'll start with 5 years from now, and then I'll back propagate.
Right, awesome.
Derive it back.
Even better. Yeah.
So think about, like, in 5 years from now, I think many of us believe that there's going to be some technical product manager. Notice I didn't mention a developer, but I did mention technical. Writing some feature. Let's imagine that. Like, I am a technical product manager in one of the biggest e-commerce. And now I'm dictating a feature to my AI. Hey, every time one of my users is adding a second item to the cart, where it somehow relates to the first cart, suggest the color that will fit the first one. And then the AI generates like 5 different like flows for that, including the actual code underneath it. And then the technical product manager chooses, according to different criteria, I'm not going to touch on that, one of them. And then clicks push to production. That's the part that we need to stop for a second. And there's have to be that additional dashboard, okay, that shows, here are all the tests that were run to verify this code. Here are all the tests that were run to verify other flows that are relevant to that. Nothing was broken. Here's what we checked that this Qodo platform checked, that maintainability of the code, and according to the company's best practices, and even according to the company's values. Let's not touch that for a second. And by the way, we noticed one piece of code that we're not sure about, and you should send it to your dev lead. Okay, so I think how I imagine it is that there's going to be like an intelligent coding system, intelligent coding solution that is in charge of writing the best code it could, it will probably work quite fast. I'm relating here to thinking fast and slow. On the generation part, you probably work as fast as you can. But now that you understand that this is probably what you mean, now it's time to think slow and think, how do I want to refactor, verify, test, etc. Before I push to production? And that's a different technique and a different platform. So now deriving back to today, in order to do that in real world enterprise software, there's so many things that needs to be attached, checked, mocked. So it will take time to get to that future. And I think that this future will be achieved by many mini agents. Each one of them is doing something relatively, compartmentalized, like very specific. Like this one is very good in verifying that you're not breaking databases. This one is very good in verifying unit testing. This one is good on UX testing, like end-to-end, etc. And then each one of these agents needs to run once you generated some piece of code and give feedback back and get the feedback back in order to give a green light or something that needs to be improved. And now at Qodo and other companies as well, each one is building a different building block. Eventually, someone is going to put his hands on all of these building blocks, and then we'll be able to enable the next generation of AI developer and enterprise, which just doesn't exist today.
All right. So now I've worked for healthcare companies, insurance companies, completely different domains, but you needed to understand all these regulations and rules within each domain. So an AI, I think, would be generally trained. How is it going to be? How would it know your system or your domain? Eventually, will there be an LLM for healthcare, an LLM for insurance? Like, I mean, obviously you can have one that writes code and writes and tests it, but how does it know the context of your company or your software or your business domain? I don't know if that makes sense.
Amazing question. Makes a lot of sense. That's actually very related to my point. I think that why do I claim that there's going to be many agents on the integrity part? Because I think that each agent will have like a set of guardrails and data that is related to its task. Like one is was well engineered. That's why we call it flow engineering, our paper. One was well engineered to deal with the compliance and security and different like best practices related to what you expect in software and healthcare, and specifically would also know how to attach itself to specific code bases of specific organization. And it will verify that the code generation part of the system actually adheres to this. So, and I think like to create each part of this specific agent requires a lot of expertise and time invested in it. And yes, like it would be different guardrails and guidelines giving in a health and or security or education, etc. Like markets. Again, I'm talking about like a few years from now. I think we're still building those building blocks and capabilities.
So do you see like a role of like an AI guardrail engineer type deal as a possibility?
Let's say it's like a sub. It's like a sub. It's like you have front end, back end, etc. So I definitely seeing like you have like security experts, etc. I definitely seeing that type of sub role.
All right. I mean, if someone's listening to this and they're a developer or a tester, they might be like, this is just disruption at its highest. And I think it's going to happen. A lot of people think it's hype. How do you know what's hype and what's real, though? Obviously, you've been in the AI game and machine learning before, it really started taking off the past few years. So how would you persuade someone to say, hey, look, this isn't just hype. It actually works?
Okay, so first I want to relate and to these people that think this way, that actually can understand them, because I think right now there is people tend to overestimate capabilities of AI today. I think eventually there is no real solution right now to create software end to end if it's not, despite all the amazing demos that you see out there. They're usually like 5 pages website that you can probably just do yourself by choosing some GitHub repo. Now, it's still amazing that you need to go and search the Git repo, which is better, and actually make modification, etc. It might take you a few hours, then it'll take you 20 minutes. It's amazing, but we're far from actually, having AI automating creation of real world software that's run by millions. The gap between these 5 pages website to a real software is huge. And it will take time to actually fully disrupt that part. So I can understand people that are actually professionals and looking what we have today and saying, oh my God, everybody are exaggerating. At the same time, I think they might be underestimating the power of using this technology and slowly or quickly building system, comprehensive system around them, like the one that I just described in the last 15 minutes. Once we actually integrate AI, not just hey, spit this website for me, but we integrated to apply, verify best practice. We integrated to check 100 different, it will take time to engineer that, but we make it help us verify 100 different types of possible issues and bugs, or groups of them. And another one that is in charge of verifying that we're not ruining or databases, etc. I'm focusing right now on the integrity part. Then suddenly there could be an opportunity of a level of automation that is really, really high, and eventually it will even exceed our expectation. I think that happened with real, let's say, dark or magic technology, like electricity, right? Or resist chips and things like that, transistors, etc. That originally people imagined AI when transistor came out, but it took much more time. But eventually it came. The same thing here. Eventually it will come. So that's what I have to say to those people, that there's full systems that are being built that will be more than what you see, and they are the one that going to provide the promise of automation that we're talking about. But still, I think people will be involved, by the way. Developers are going to profession going to change, but there are going to be a lot of developers.
All right, so there are going to be a lot of developers. So how much do developers need to know about coding then, or language syntax? And testers need to know about testing at that point. It almost sounds like you're going to have to be an expert developer and tester, not a low-level one. But if you have AI doing it, how do you get to be an expert with AI doing all the heavy lifting?
Yeah, I very much agree with your second part. I'll explain. I think that the majority of people that are working right now are there's a Gaussian, right? Yeah, you have quite a few, junior, but the majority is somewhere between junior to mid and mid to senior. And then you have the seniors and the principals. And I actually think that what's going to happen, or maybe the more accurate saying, being junior about coding, not the amount of years of experience, how good you are in actual software development. So that's a Gaussian. I think we're going to see 2 Gaussians. Actually, there's going to be much more, many people, 10x or 100x more people, like Canva, by the way. 100x more people can do design or outputs of designs of design. So there's going to be 100x more people can do software development because they need to write technical English. At the same time, I think that with all the respect to AI and relate to what I said before, it's going to take many, many, many years until you don't need the developers to verify, to review, to deal with the hard problems. And actually, there's going to be so much code written by AI. So there's going to be a lot of code that developers needs to, tackle, hustle with, debug, and steer other AI to work together with AI to solve. We will be able to solve much more complex problems. I'm talking about flying to Mars, but also software problems. And with that, developers very, very professional with AI would be able to solve things. And then, considering this world, how do we get to a point where there's so many more developers that sort of professional than before? That's an open question. I don't think I have a good answer, but to some extent, I think AI could push people that do want to learn actually learn faster. Like I can tell you myself that with AI I'm learning faster if I care about it, right? If I just like I can do copy paste from anyway, so I can do even copy paste faster now with AI. But if I care about the learning, actually I can ask many questions that will take me a lot of time. Okay, why did you give me this code? Why it could work? Why it could not? What are the alternatives? Thing that will take me a lot of time might help like actually push to even a bigger portion of professional developers.
Yeah, that reminds me of saying developers won't be replaced by AI, but developers with AI will replace developers. I don't know if that makes, but it's going to be an assistant almost. Sounds like.
And the same thing for testers, by the way. So I
Yeah,
related to
yeah.
developers, but I believe the same thing that I said, copy paste almost to testers.
Yeah, yeah. So what can AI not do? I can't think of the algorithm that I always read about when I started university about I think it was a halting problem or something that like no matter what computing power you have, it would never be you can never get over that hurdle. So there has to be something with AI that it's not going to be able to do, or is that indeterminate because we don't know what we don't know?
Yeah, I think that I'm not necessarily going to answer that you expected, not a mathematical one or so. Despite like promising websites or chatbots that are actually replacing people, replacing professional, I don't know, people are talking to bots more and more. I just don't want to mention names, but I think you know what I'm talking about. Then I still think that even 10 or 15, 18 months or 36 months or even 5 years from now, I don't believe that despite like the fact that AI could talk like a human, it will actually replace the human interaction. So I know that's not what you meant. But I think that actually AI won't replace the interaction between the product manager to the business owner to the developer. Like around a lot about like creating the intent of what we want to do is going to be augmented by AI. But I still think like decision of what we actually like want to do is going to be by humans. Like again, I'm not saying that it's not going to be involved by AI. We're going to brainstorm with AI, and AI would give us like recommendation and even statistics like, hey, this has a chance of 51 chances to succeed because of this and that when we want to make a decision. But still, I think like the bigger part of decision and communication, which includes like brainstorming, the creativity. It's gonna happen by people. So like developers, like we said before, is going to shift more to a technical product managers than they were before.
Absolutely. All right. So we touched on a lot of topics here. I don't think we really dived in, and we touched on a little bit what actually you all do at CODU or Codium. Yeah. So maybe you mentioned mutation testing. So like, what do you all do? Like, how does it help? I know you've touched on it, but maybe like a little bit more.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So by the way, this like I'll elaborate a bit more about what my previous question, and then it actually fits well this one. So you might have thought that maybe like things like architecture would be hard for AI, and I think I see a lot of people talking about that. Like AI would have a hard time about software architecture and things like that. So in my opinion, one day it will come as well. Like AI can learn all the AWS and actually maybe can even read logs and other things that for us is hard to do. But I still think that the eventual architecture decision it will be made by a human. Just the suggestions would be made by AI, which are not. There's no tool like that today. And that leads me to your question. I think, like for example, in order for AI to suggest architecture decision, Copilot can't really do that, and LLM cannot really do right now. You would need to integrate like other techniques into such kind of a solution. I'm not only talking about knowledge that it would train, but actually like thinking processes and thinking frameworks. What we do at Qodo Yeah, it's the first time, by the way, like in a podcast, I'm mentioning this name. So I hear that sometime CODU, I heard you saying, but it makes sense. Like we're QODO.
Qodo.
Yeah.
I'll
But
have to write
CODU
it
is
down.
actually also written, you write it the same, right? QODO. So Qodo is like our solutions. Yeah, it's the first time, and you're the first person actually probably to hear this change. Like we're announcing it in a few days. The thing is that we have different agents, right? We have, for example, what we call the cover agent. This agent is in charge of taking an existing test suite, for example, even one test, and increasing the test suite coverage, for example, from 10% to 80%. It is right now doing only regression tests, but it's a huge problem. Like every time you want to add a new feature, you're afraid you're breaking something. One of the ways to reduce that is like create a immense testing suite, like reaching 80, 90% code coverage regression one. And then you know that if you're developing a new feature, you shouldn't break the regression test. So what it does, it takes for you like your one or two tests you have in a test suite and enhances it for 10, 20. It really depends. Like how are the criteria to stop at a certain code coverage. Now, code coverage, that's the criteria where to stop, is actually many would consider that as a proxy metric, even a vanity metric. I have one friend that told me that he's a VP R&D. His teams they must reach to 80% code coverage. One day he checked one of the repos that reaches 85. He was so like proud, and he noticed that there's no asserts, not bad ones, no asserts. So it means that the code coverage like almost not reliable at all, because there's some value for it because if the test crash, but it's not really checking logic. So what we think is that you need to apply, and by the way, AI many times might do that. We notice it. You call even a very good LLM, and it might create you like bad or not complete or good asserts. Now, with mutation tests, it's a specific technique that what it does, it creates mutants in your code, actually changing the logic, and it wants to check that the test suite actually kills them. For example, if there is no assert in your test, probably it won't fail the mutant. So it means that despite having a high code coverage, you're actually having a bad test suite. So this is like an example of a technique that most code generation tools, LLM, would not exploit. And if you're focusing on quality, like we do at Qodo, QODO, then we do that. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, code quality, especially with the coverage metrics, I've seen teams gamify it where they just put in checks that are meaningless and they get to high code 80, 90%, but it's not doing anything. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked a lot about development and using AI. How about production? Do you see, with open telemetry and things like that, that once you can actually use AI in production as well, that yes, the code has been tested, but once it goes in the wild, you don't necessarily know third-party services it's using or whatever it's using in the background, because it's in the wild, it's not in your bare metal type of environment. So there's a lot of unknowns. Do you see AI being used now to say, okay, there's an issue because it's open telemetry, I know the logs, let me fix it without having a human involved in that process?
Yeah, totally. So I think when we started the company, then we thought, what do we need to do, like philosophy level, to reach 99.99 code integrity? For us, code integrity is like means that it's well tested. The code is according to your specification. The performance is as you expected. There's no we can even inject like security in it, but like it's maintainable. That's what we call code integrity. I mentioned I'm going to get to it, and it happened to explain what I mean by code integrity. And now, when we imagine how can we get to 99.9, what are the thing we imagine is what are the sources of data that such system would need? And we actually marked 7 data sources. I'm not going to talk about all, but definitely one of them is the software, the running, like all the data relates to the actual run of the software in production. You mentioned open telemetry. It could be like a very good glimpse into that. Like it's not like as eBPF or whatever that gives you up down to the stack, like the function level stack in most cases, but you can like output like very important parts, as far as I know, of the data and that runs through your software and the event that's happening in your software, etc. So I definitely think that we must have this kind of information to eventually verify the integrity. I'll give an example. The same method, like even a sort method, think about a sort method, might work or not work, might be good or bad, depending on the distribution of data that run through it, right? So, and usually the distribution of data that run through that sort function only when you actually run it in production. I gave a simple example, but now take it a bit more complicated. It's just also like true to more complicated example.
Love it. So you mentioned security a few times. I would think, doesn't this make security even harder? Because, even using third-party open source libraries, it has vulnerabilities. How do you know, like, bad actors aren't going to almost like seed an AI? And I would think it would make it even harder to detect these type of things. Is that something people could be concerned about? Is AI going to be able to help? Do you see regulations saying, hey, we can't use AI for this because we're worried about security? Is that something that would be worked out over the years if it comes to that?
Actually, I think it could go to two directions. To be frank, one future is that you were going to have like 5x, 10x more line of code generated every year. So it means that the risk surface actually grows. Security 1, 2, it could be like bugs, which we saw like also could be really meaningful. 3, data leaks, etc. So the risk surface grows as we use AI more and more, and that's one future. And that's why it's very important to have more and more tools. And this is roughly speaking how we imagine the world's going to, because I think like people would be very biased towards generating really fast. And then usually when you think very fast, even if you're an AI, you will do mistakes. And the security part and the verification part, etc., would think slower, let's say it like that. And there's another future where, hey, maybe we can train during the training part, can train AI so well, including managing to catch like injections that people try to put in the data that AI was about to train on, or we trained so well to manage to recognize that it's going to spit like a security problem that it will help us to actually, to start with, have less problems. That's the second future. In my opinion, we're going to see a mix of both. So we're not going to see the risk surface totally explode, like although lines of code and automation is going to explode. It's just going to grow linearly, let's say like that. And at the same time, it's still going to grow, and we will have to have those tools if we want to have our world keep working because the software, our world runs on software.
All right, so we touched a lot on AI for development, and we did talk about testing. But I'm just curious to know, a lot of my audience, but this is for the DevOps show, but I also have one for automation testing. Where do you see AI with testing specifically, or the future of AI in testing, if someone is listening in and they see themselves more as a tester?
Yeah, I love the question. Thank you. And I tell you why, because I think like many people hear the word testing and it sounds like one thing. Actually, testing is such a huge field. You have the triangle of testing, will bottom up like unit testing, component testing, integration testing, system testing, end-to-end testing, etc. UI testing, even UX testing, I would claim. There is different flavor, like regression testing or smoke testing, or like testing for new features, testing for regression, like I mentioned, etc. It's such a huge world, and fortunately and unfortunately, to check software, you probably need them all. So asking like AI for testing is like asking like work in all this entire like field, like big field, where can we gain the most? So we at Qodo, we think about it quite a lot. And I think like each testing has different UX UI and different techniques. So we started with unit testing, and I think that's like the closest to code generation to some extent. But I think like AI could really help, for example, a lot with the UX testing. Like maybe we'll call it end-to-end testing, like testing, for example, flows, good and bad flows on your website. Think about it. It's like very intuitive. You can describe what you're doing in natural language. There's even the cucumber or whatever, like different languages, playwright, etc., that are almost English on how you want to, like, it's not like that far-fetched to think that AI could help there. I saw a few tries. I don't think anyone nailed it. And again, shameless plug, be aware if we are going to release something in that field very soon. But I still think like there's potential about that. So bottom line, my suggestion around it and my intuition and insight is that like testing is one of the most complicating part of software development, just what I mentioned. And I think it will take time for actually AI to integrate there, because it's such like a complex world, but it's going to happen. And as a tester, look at tools, try them, be that futuristic tester. And as a manager, think about what's your biggest, pains around testing, and check it out. Maybe you'll find something that is different than just autocomplete that can really like meaningfully boost your quality and productivity.
With modal AI, it could do visuals now. So where do you see the future of end-to-end testing then? Is it going to be all image-based where you just click, click, click? Because you don't need to code it, it seems like, because it understands the visuals of a flow. I hope that makes sense. It knows what a button is, it knows what a text box is, and you just say enter, like just using visuals, and then you can take that and run it on a mobile device, all these devices, because it's just going by image-based or visual cues rather than text prompts. Does that make sense? Is that
Yes.
what you see?
So I think there's a difference between what's possible to what I think would actually be implemented. I'll explain. I think like it is possible. Yeah, exactly. I think it will be possible to supposedly create a testing agent that only focuses on your visual instructions, or maybe even explores your website or mobile app by itself as a human, only through the visual. The thing is that I think different than us human and developers, human and maybe testers, that it's hard for us to have the capacity to look on the code and visual at simultaneously. There's no reason that actually AI won't do that simultaneously, because there's still a lot of knowledge, and information that can be extracted from the code itself. By the way, also in order to do test healing, or to get some hints about like the next steps, etc. And by the way, also in order to try to find ways to break your flows. Maybe there's going to be hints not in the visual, but actually hints in the code. So although there is possible, in my opinion, like within even next year, to build a testing agent that is focused on the visual itself, I believe at least that's what we're doing at Qodo, to mixing between the two modalities. Now, last reason why, because I think like for some things, it's actually much better and easier to check on the visual itself, because some things are very dependent on your Chrome version or things like that, with all the Z indexing and like what's the actual thing that humans are looking. But at the same time, in the code, there's a lot of hints in the information that you can get to try to find like good flows or bad flows that could break or make things.
Awesome. Okay, Itamar, before I go, is there one piece of actual advice you can give to someone to help them with their AI DevOps efforts? And what's the best way to find, contact you, or learn more about Qodo?
Yeah. So about my advice, might be a bit generic, but I would say using AI is like a skill. It's like using cloud, using a new programming language, etc. Don't let it be perfect before you start checking it, exploring different. Don't only use AI for code completion. Use it for. There's so many other options. To to embrace AI or exploit AI. For example, shameless plug, if you go to Qodo AI, Qodo.ai, you'll find that we have various tools that helps you around things around quality that are not necessarily code generation. So that's my advice. Like try out, like develop that skill and become like that, the future software developer. About reaching us, we just renamed our company from Codium AI to Qodo AI. So you can find us on social, QODO, on our website. From there, like probably the best way to land, and you can find me and Itamar, Itamar, usually like Friedman, and you'll find me, or Itamar Mar again. You'll find me on X, on Twitter as well.
And for links of everything of value we covered in this DevOps Toolchain show, head on over to testguild.com/P165. So that's it for this episode of the DevOps Toolchain show. I'm Joe. My mission is to help you succeed creating end-to-end full-stack DevOps toolchain awesomeness. As always, test everything and keep the good. Cheers. Hey, thank you for tuning in. It's incredible to connect with close to 400,000 followers across all our platforms and over 40,000 email subscribers who are at the forefront of automation, testing, and DevOps. If you haven't yet, join our vibrant community at testguild.com, where you become part of our elite circle driving innovation in software testing and automation. And if you're a tool provider or have a service looking to empower our guild with solutions that elevate skills and tackle real-world challenges, we're excited to collaborate. Visit testguild.info to explore how we can create transformative experiences together. Let's push the boundaries of what we can achieve.
The Test Guild Automation Testing Podcast. With lutes and lyres the bards began their song. A tune of knowledge, a melody of code. Through the air it spread like wildfire through the land, guiding testers, showing the secrets to behold.